Right, I am live apparently. So yes, folks. First of all, welcome. Welcome to the 8 p.m. stream. So I hope you can all hear me okay, and everything should be fine. We have lots to talk about this evening. So whilst I'm just waiting for things to kick in properly here. Just to say that this evening, rather than just talk about a couple of big issues, thought we'd talk about loads of little issues. So I hope you enjoy the change. Sometimes it's important to try and cover lots of different things, really. So yeah, hi Ozzy, hi Chris, hi Andrew, Mr. Joe Cool, all of you folks, nice to see you. And just as we go through the preliminaries, we always talk about the preliminaries, the build up to this here. Do me a favor, if you're watching this on Facebook, share it, like it. YouTube, subscribe. Hit the YouTube subscribe button and share it on YouTube. And then, of course, it's also, if you want to see the social media links, they're all down below. You can follow me on all these different platforms. So have a look at them. And very important, you give the thumbs up. Thumbs up for the next hour. That's what I want to see you guys doing. Give yourself a digital workout if you can, please. That would be much appreciated. And then last but not least, if you want to support altnewsmedia.net/donate, drop a few pounds in the hat. If you can do that, please. That's what keeps the show on the road. So that's what you've got to all do. So, okay, I've given you your instructions now. So I hope you're all paying attention. I will be asking questions at the end, by the way. So look, that's where we are. And as I say, I want to go through lots of different things. So perhaps to kick off, I want to, of course, more important than any of that malarkey, I want to bring on, of course, my special. She's always special, and she's here on a Monday night, and it is Rebecca Butler, and she's there. As if by magic, Rebecca, I couldn't see you.
Hi, David. Hello, everybody. Nice to see Chris winning the stream competition every week. So now that Jed's dropped off, nice to see Chris there nice and early, unlike some other people. John, hello. Simon, hello. Harry, hello, everybody. Really nice to see you again today.
Okay, thanks, folks, for being here. And now we're getting into the way of the show. I have to confess, folks, by the way, yes, I was a little bit late for this one tonight, but so what? So what? It's that's part of life's rich tapestry, isn't it? Just cutting it fine. So Rebecca, as I said at the beginning, so rather than go through a couple of big topics, I got lots of little topics to go through, I suppose. But that's quite good fun, I think, really. So there's a couple of these which I think we kick off with the first one, which actually you brought to my attention. The first story of the night. And, well, Rebecca, what have you got to say about this story then?
I mean, talk about not reading the room. This really was the standout headline for me today. What the actual flying flamingo are schools doing, giving children who are at least 6 months behind. I reckon that's a conservative estimate. I reckon it's a year behind now on their education, giving them a snow day. That is just downright ridiculous. It's online teaching. The poor mothers at home who are trying to work while simultaneously keeping their children engaged on devices with their schools, they go and do that. I mean, what are they thinking? It just says to me time and time again that teachers are not really that interested in educating children.
I know, but
it's really off. For me, it's really off.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw the story, Rebecca, it even raised my cynical eyebrows a little because, a snow day, a day off for remote teaching. Are you kidding us? Plus, I don't know if you saw it today. I'm sure I saw it somewhere floating around that one of the teachers' union has put an appeal in to get a pay rise for teachers who are giving snow days off for remote learning. And I think you're right, Rebecca. I reckon kids are at least 6 months behind, maybe a lot more than that. And I mean, we see the government probably governments. I blame the government in a way, but government's talking about maybe extending the school year a little bit into the summer, which kind of makes sense to me to try and make up the thing. And I bet the teaching unions will not be happy about that. If that, so yeah, we live in a world where teachers don't want to teach.
Well, we live in a world where teachers don't want to teach, but worse than that, our elected representatives don't want to take them on and are running scared of them. So, it's become increasingly clear now since the financial collapse of 2008 that the only secure job is a public sector job. And when that is a unionized job, you have phenomenal power. I mean, whenever we've seen pension spats, things like the university lecturers, we've seen spats with the teachers over the last year. They are heavily left-wing unionized behavior, which actually has quite a negative impact on those they serve. So if you look just as a comparison, wage rises in the public sector have increased sort of 1 to 2% per annum over the last 12 years since the financial collapse. They have had a protected wage increase. Yeah. And of course, relative to inflation, which has been really, really low, they have had real-time wage increases. By the same token, savers have not benefited from prudency and having savings, but private sector workers, people who are self-employed, people who rely on contracts, of which there are a huge number, private sector workers have actually decreased their incomes relative to public sector workers. And the discrepancy is huge. But, and this is my really big issue about it, is, you can get upset about the unions and people not doing their jobs, but I've always been a great believer that the private sector is nimble, it is agile, it is able to do things quickly. And what better example do you have than vaccine procurement in the UK of the this COVID crisis? It was Kate Bingham, a private equity leader in biotech, private sector, never had a government job, never had any role in public service. She comes in and goes, right, ABC, do it. It's got to be done. And we're doing it. And she just showed how powerful the private sector can be. And yet these people who are paid on taxpayers' salaries, they have a sodding snow day. How dare they? How dare they?
I know. I remember back in my BBC days, Rebecca, back when I was allowed through the hollowed portals of the BBC, I remember one of my favourite topics to rattle on about was there was a survey that came out here in Northern Ireland, but it showed the disparity in average wage between public sector, private sector. And what really bothered me was that one of the leading newspapers over here did an analysis. Anyway, the variance was 48%. 48%. And then the left, he said, yeah, but you can't compare because, of course, private or public sector jobs are very skilled jobs, whereas private sector, well, I mean, that's people cleaning the toilets, basically. So you've got to expect, I mean, such a hateful, condescending way to talk about working people. But as you said, that disparity, Rebecca, it's still out there. And, all we've seen even during COVID, I mean, there's not too many public sector jobs being lost. There's been a lot of private sector jobs lost. So, yeah, I mean, it just annoys me.
Why have we furloughed any public sector worker? Why were civil servants furloughed? Why? I mean, it just says that they actually aren't needed if they were available, if they could be furloughed. And one of my big issues, I know we weren't talking big issues tonight, but actually I've decided this is a big issue. Why when there was an ample opportunity for the Parks and Leisure Department to actually crack on and do things to our public spaces. Why were they furloughed? They're still being paid. Just put them out and do their job. There's no reason for example, a local authority, somebody who fixes the riverbanks, for example, why would they be furloughed? Why? They could do that job during the first lockdown. There was no need to send those people home. Absolutely no need at all. Outside job, really, I would have said zero risk of transmission of COVID.
Well, I agree with you, but I think I saw on your one. I think it might have been your Facebook, Rebecca, or maybe it was your Twitter. Anyway, I think some photographs. You'd been out somewhere and there in a public space, and there was like benches and public benches and tables, kind of, what's the word? They've been sort of taped up to stop people using them, which I found in my local park as well. Last April or so, the staff came out to stop people from sitting in a big, huge, empty park. I mean, you can't say they haven't been productive. I know. But anyway, listen, that's enough bashing the public sector. How dare we do that?
No, it's not about bashing the public public sector so much as don't demonize the private sector, because the private sector provides so much employment, so much tax revenue. There's no hiding if you're in the private sector. There are loads and loads of people on 0 hours contracts who are their own limited companies. There are so many people who set up as consultants at great risk to themselves, great financial risk. They have no pension, they have no maternity leave, they have no sick leave. Look at barristers, we're self-employed. Nobody pays me a holiday. I am not working if I'm not in court, as a barrister. So, and that is a huge personal sacrifice, because there's nothing stopping me getting cancer, and who's going to help me out then? So we are a nation of shopkeepers, and that doesn't mean just people who run shops. We are a nation of small business people. And, what I really object to is demonizing the private sector when it comes to the health service, because actually having private providers in the health service is an exceptionally good thing, because it delivers services. It really, really does. And so, whenever you see a mobile breast scanner, that's a private sector. How brilliant. You can go and have your breast scan done at a Sainsbury's car park. And that's thanks to the private sector. So easy to demonize. And it's wrong. We should support the private sector much.
Yeah, you're right. And we shouldn't demonize. And Sharon on the stream here, who I know works in the public sector, makes a very valid point that, of course, a lot of the decisions to furlough people in the public sector or whatever, that was made by the top bods. I mean, that was not made at kind of, operational level. That was people on rather large six-figure salaries, I would imagine, Rebecca, just decreeing that, people shouldn't go to work. But anyway, that's enough. We're finished with the public sector. We're going to move on to the next story, Rebecca, which is another one of yours, by the way. Can we have the next story brought up, please? Because this is this is a cracker as well, really. Another one, Rebecca. Do you want to? Because it kind of follows on from what we were talking about last week. I think it was the whole EU vaccine malarkey thing. This story is a cracker.
So, my favorite topic is the Lisbon Treaty. And what the Lisbon Treaty did was it created the roots of a federalized Europe, EU. And in doing so, it created a foreign office. Thereafter, this foreign office has done nothing but one screw up after another. So, having expelled all of the diplomats only 3 years ago for the Skripal poisonings in Salisbury, the EU then screws up its vaccine procurement. and ends up having to go to Russia on a diplomatic mission to acquire some Sputnik 5 vaccines. Now, for all the people who are hesitant about taking the AstraZeneca or the Pfizer because it's been untested, people in Germany and France are going to be having the Sputnik 5, which isn't even out of phase 2 trials and has been delivered since September. So I don't think there's a major issue with the safety. But while people are shouting about AstraZeneca and Pfizer, which has gone through the correct procedures, criticize them if you will, that's fine. Now they're looking to Russia to Sputnik 5 because they've screwed up. Sure. And Guy Verhofstadt, the great devil of Brexit, even he said, "What the hell is going on? You've gone on a diplomatic mission in the light of what's happening with Navalny and all of the protests over what you're doing to essentially democracy in Russia." And he didn't even demand any questions.
No.
But they screwed up on the Ukraine and the Crimean problems almost immediately when the EU decided to flex its little bicep on being a foreign office as recognized as a state. It screwed up. It had no idea what it was doing. It created more problems.
I think
in Crimea.
But I'm not sure if it was this story as well, but I think as well as trying to beg vaccines from Russia, were they trying to get some from China as well? Did I read that somewhere? Something about the EU looking at potential. I mean, this honestly, Rebecca, I mean, we could do a whole program on this because the catastrophe that is the European Union cannot be overemphasized. It's just so it's institutionally
inept. It's lost the plot completely because the Sinovacs now, because they've got a free trade deal with Russia now, bizarre, China can put Sinovacs into Europe, but actually the UK can't. The UK has a trade barrier putting AstraZeneca jabs from AstraZeneca factories in the UK. We have a problem putting them into the EU, but China can put them in with no border. It's just ridiculous because of their stupidity last week when they put in the protocol, when they exercised that, they actually excluded the UK along with places like Venezuela, but China's included on the vaccine imports. So, I mean, Hungary has bought its full complement of Sinovacs and Sputnik 5. I mean, fine. You know what? By the way, China is far better at dealing with health crises than we are. Their death rate is much lower than ours, by the way, and their health services have shown to be actually quite resilient when it comes to a pandemic. They're, probably a little bit prepared for it in a way we weren't. So I wouldn't say a Chinese vaccine is unsafe. I would never say that because I don't know. But what the hell is going on? How could the EU get one disaster after another? Really, it's stabbing itself in the foot, literally every few days.
I think, Rebecca, it's stabbing itself in the foot while shooting itself in the head. It's quite frankly unbelievable, that story. But anyway, moving on, we have more of these.
Can I just finish? Because I know your stream will like this. When I was a nurse, we used to say, disabled at birth, born with both feet in its mouth. And that's what the EU is. It keeps putting its foot in its mouth. It cannot get it right. Nothing is good PR in the EU at the moment.
No, it's not. It's not. It honestly, it validates everything us Brexiteers have been saying for years. But in a way, Rebecca, that I've got to be honest, I didn't think it would happen so quickly. And in such a crucially important issue as the well-being of the peoples of the European Union. I didn't expect them to shoot themselves in the head, stick both feet in their mouth. I didn't expect it so quickly, but it's kind of, at one level it's good to see, and at another level I don't wish ill on anybody or the nations to go through stress over vaccines or lack of vaccines or whatever. But ultimately,
you're more generous than me because I'm loving every minute of this.
I'm a big softy at heart, Rebecca.
I'm not. I'm loving it.
Unfortunately, it's my weak side. But anyway, moving on. That's it in that one. Right. This one caught my eye. Because obviously I'm a big fan of This Morning, Rebecca. I mean, I just can't get enough of Philip Schofield and the gang. Well, no, I didn't actually see the program, but this was a story that caught my eye. This was a doctor who went on to this program, and she caused a bit of a row on the program by stating that weight loss isn't good for you, and what we need is more fat superheroes. That's right, we need more obesity. Now, this came as a slight revelation to me, given that for the last several years we've heard nothing about the fact, the UK is suffering an obesity crisis. But this is apparently, she calls herself the fat doctor, which I have to say, Rebecca, if I seen that on someone's business card, probably I wouldn't be going to their door immediately. But on a serious note, I mean, weight loss for some people might not be good for them. I accept that. And I don't mean to be unkind to people who carry extra pounds. Don't mean any of that. But hey, listen, being obese is not a good thing. It's just not. And fat superheroes is the last bloody thing we need. We don't need to see Superman or Wonder Woman wobbling around the stream or around the screen. So I wonder, do you agree that weight loss isn't good and that we need fat role models so people can be happy about their obese status?
Well, this story came out of a piece of research that was done, I think it was in Harvard, and they looked at the body mass index of middle-aged people. And if you had a normal to marginally raised BMI, but I mean marginal, so 25 to 27, you had a longer life expectancy. So being over lean in your middle ages is not a good thing. So reasonable weight gain is a healthy thing. With women, when they go through the menopause, of course, the fat deposits in different parts of the body because of the absence of estrogen. And then, all the story about when you have higher elevated estrogen levels through being too fat, you run a grave risk of breast cancer. So obesity is a big risk factor for breast cancer. But middle-aged women, so people my age, should maintain a BMI of sort of, say 28, 27, 28. It's not the best indicator, I have to say, but a little bit of flesh is okay. But we're talking here about, I'm sorry, an obese doctor saying it's okay to be obese, and it isn't okay to be obese.
No, it's not.
It's not okay for type 2 diabetes. It's not okay for many, many cancers. And then it's not okay for your orthopedic health either. Your musculoskeletal system cannot tolerate the load bear on knees, hips, and ankles. So people get extremely worn away cartilages. They get a lot of back problems. These are all burdens on the health service. And if an obese person goes in for a procedure, their hospital stay is markedly longer than a thinner person, and they then run a risk of a hospital-acquired infection. So it's a fat doctor justifying why they don't want to get thin, but she's not even middle-aged. So, it's just like a stupid story, and it's a stupid doctor who shouldn't actually be on television. I'm sorry, but, calling yourself a doctor is not a gold-plated bubble that prevents you from being criticized for talking complete and utter rubbish. And she's talking rubbish because she's fat and she needs to lose weight. If she was in my family, she'd be told to lose weight by me. I'd say, get out and you need to lose a stone or two, love. get out.
Well, yeah, and as you say, I mean, she actually wasn't. I don't know what age she was, Rebecca, but she wasn't that old. But patently, as we all age, then carrying all those extra pounds or stones in her case is just not a good idea. I remember again. I seem to be reminiscing about my BBC time tonight, but there you go. It just came into my head. I used to go on a program, the glory years, Rebecca. I used to go on a BBC program hosted by a guy who some in the stream will know. I don't know if you know him. A guy called Stephen Nolan. Stephen Nolan of BBC used to. In fact, it was his program that caused my demise from the BBC. But that's a story for another day. But he was about I think 22 stone, 22, 23 stone, and he's a relatively young man, I guess, maybe mid-30s, something like that. And I used to go on a show, and we used to talk about topics like, should those who are morbidly obese be given access to the NHS? And given what you've just said, the fact that there's so many, it's more complicated in terms of dealing with them. And this is something I actually noticed, Rebecca. Again, this is a reminisce night tonight, but kind of on a sad note. When my dad, in his sort of final years on this earth, used to be regularly unwell, used to take him into have to take him to hospital. And one of the things that I always found really strange was I used to sort of walking in and out. You could see the ambulances and the stretchers or the wheelchairs. They were much bigger than I remember. They're like double-sized wheelchairs. And then that was the thing. And my argument was, something when it comes to all this obesity malarkey, you can sum it up very simply. Eat less, exercise more.
Yes.
And I know it's a bit of a cliche, but there's more than a grain of truth in that, isn't it? Take responsibility for your own health.
Of course, and don't claim to be a victim if somebody says you're too fat, because visceral fat is the big topic in medicine. So that is fat that surrounds all of your internal organs. And so, the risks of cardiovascular, strokes, all that is really, really high. What you're talking about is people who don't understand a fundamental formula, because it tends to be fat people who are always on diets. Slim people are never on diets.
Yeah.
It's a simple formula: calories in versus calories out. It doesn't matter how you put them in. You've got to put out more than you put in order to lose weight. You eat the same as you expend if you want to keep your weight stable. It's really, really not hard. And a bit of self-deprivation, a bit of intermittent starving, whatever it is, to reduce your calorie intake is fine. Like today, it's been a horrible, cold, windy day. I ate 3 crumpets today. I would never do that. But tomorrow, I won't eat anything, right? So, my weight fluctuates a couple of pounds here and there. Lockdown has been a real struggle for me. And I have put on weight. Everybody, I think, has generally put on weight. But it's fine, because I know that, basically I'm a very outdoors person. And when I can, when the sun comes out more, I'll be out more. So it's fine. I'm not that stressed about my weight. But I'm not lucky, right? I'm not lucky. I have been quite strict all my life to make sure that I do a lot of exercise, because I like to eat food. So I know what the formula is, and I know how to keep myself within a range. 35% of Britain this time last year was obese. 35%. And with obesity comes, as I said, all of the problems with your joints, with your heart, with your brain, your vascular system. Your visceral fat is a problem. Cancers are hugely linked to obesity. Pre-lockdown, we had a problem. This was one of the more irresponsible news stories. If you think anti-vaxxers shouldn't be on the news, this definitely shouldn't be on the news, because it completely misinterpreted a piece of research that came out in the Lancet last Friday.
Yeah. Yeah, well, of course, when it comes to that was Good Morning Britain or whatever. So, I mean, trash TV. That's kind of what you expect. But a lot of people watch that. But here's another as an aside in this one. One of the things about, I mean, you're right. Lockdown is difficult for us all, especially those like like who do want to kind of take care of themselves and exercise and stuff. And it's been terrific. I found it really difficult because as someone who swam daily. That was my thing, Rebecca. I swam
Yeah.
every day. Not to be able to swim has been massively frustrating. But you can get around it. You can go walking, weather permitting, and stuff like that. There's things you can do. But by the same token, we, as you said, a year ago we had 35% of the country was obese. Since then, I only have to drive to past my local McDonald's. There's massive queues at McDonald's, at Burger King, at Starbucks. People get taking in vast amounts of carbs and stuff. That just can't be good for them, I don't think.
No, and they're teaching their children. I mean, if you ever watch a program, which I have to confess, one of my big weaknesses, apart from watching Love Island, is I
Yeah,
do I do watch trash TV sometimes. You know what I
I know
mean?
you do. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so I'll watch Britain's fattest person, and you look at them, you think, well, you fat flamingo, and look at your children. Your children are as fat as hell as well. So you're going to have your gastric band done, your bariatric surgery. Well, you're just lining your children up to say it's all right. If you get a bit out of control, a surgeon will put a band around your stomach. It'll all be all right. But it's not. When I was a junior nurse, they just started doing bariatric surgery, and and that I'm unfortunately I'm old enough now to say in the old days we used to have the Nightingale wards.
Yeah.
These patients were such high risk. I mean, they were enormous. I mean, truly, truly enormous people. They're the size of a piece of furniture. They're
Yeah.
so big. And they had to lose, I think, a small percentage to show they could do it. And what we used to do in the old days is the cut on their abdomen was really from the tip of the sternum all the way down,
Mhm.
whap it all open, pile through all the fat, eventually find the stomach, stick a band round it, and reduce their stomach capacity to 50 mils. Okay. So
Mhm.
we had to rehabilitate them on the ward. So I'm a little 7 stone, 5'3" nurse having to manhandle a 35 stone woman. And because it was such major surgery, cutting
Yeah.
through fat is quite a lot of blood, loss in these
Yeah.
procedures.
Yeah.
They had to be operated on their hospital beds because nobody could lift them onto the hospital trolley. And then
Yeah.
day 2, we had to walk them all the way down the Nightingale ward to shower them. We had to mobilize them. Otherwise, they could
Yeah.
die from pulmonary embolisms and DVTs and things. And it was absolutely brutal. It was so brutal. And they had 50 mil capacity. Do you know what they used to do? Some of them, they would liquidize Mars bars so that they were so addicted to
No,
the
it's horrible. No, you're making me sick. I'm gonna be sick. No,
yeah. And
no,
they the
no.
ones that were good and were compliant, they'd come back, they have enormous sort of bat wings, and their big bellies hanging down by their knees because it was just all flaccid flesh. So they have to have all the plastic surgery to recover it. But even then, they had massive liver and bone problems. It's huge. It's a
But
massive thing.
but
Um,
Rebecca, it's almost. But it's. I mean, I think we've been around long enough to see. I don't remember back in the '70s when I was growing up. I don't remember there wasn't this kind of massive level of obesity around. It was unusual. It was more unusual, but it's become more and more normal. And the thing that bothers me the most when I see it is I see these parents. And I know you shouldn't judge other people, but you can't. Sometimes you can't help but just observe. And it's the fat parents with the obese child. And I feel so sorry for the child. I think that child, maybe little 5, 6, 7-year-old, and they're bloated. And they're the ones you'll see coming out of McDonald's, by the way, and even now with the carryout. So this is surely going to also add. I mean, the NHS, whilst we may disagree with some aspects on it, Rebecca, this must just add a whole new level of additional stresses for the future. Because those people are going to continue to live, but God knows what kind of things are going to happen to them. And the little 5-year-olds of today, the obese 5-year-olds of today, when they become 15 and maybe 20 or whatever and start having kids, what is that going to be like?
Well, God forbid nobody ever gives me Matt Hancock's job, because I wouldn't allow bariatric surgery to be done on the NHS. I just wouldn't make it available, because actually, this is just my opinion, it normalizes those children following their parents in overeating, in poor eating habits. And you are talking about overeating here. They will have 5 meals a day where you or I would have 1 or 2 or 3. They'll have 5. And actually, I think people with normal BMI might have 3 one day and 2 the next and 1 the day after, but they have regularly 5 to 7 meals a day. So they're normalizing bariatric surgery, because their solution is, well, I don't have to lose weight, I'll just do the bariatric procedure. Well, you're talking at 30 grand per person costed out for bariatric surgery. Why should the taxpayer pay for that? Because it's a cosmetic procedure. There is an alternative, which is you lose the weight yourself. Now, you can't have your breast augmentation done on the NHS. Now you can't get IVF on the NHS after your first 2 cycles. So why should you have bariatric surgery? These are rationing questions. And I personally believe that you shouldn't normalize things like bariatric surgery, precisely because it gives the wrong message. It's the quick fix.
Yeah. And of course, as an aside to all of that, again, in the past year, or roughly the last year, I was reading that the amount of alcohol being consumed in the home has gone up dramatically. Is it up like 75%? It's huge anyway. And again, whilst I like a glass of wine and it's all fine and all, nothing wrong with it, I'm not a neo-Puritan, but it's the copious amount. People sitting at home.
Oh, David's gone again. Yeah, so I'll just pick up on that. Absolutely right. The alcohol consumption during this year, so not even including the lockdown periods, but including the periods outside of lockdown, people were consuming huge amounts of alcohol. And it's almost as the government has normalized it. Interesting to note that the South African government banned alcohol. Is David back? They banned alcohol during the lockdown because they quite rightly predicted that there would be a huge incidence in domestic violence if they sort of effectively gave a license for people to drink at home. And the murder rate and the domestic violence rate in South Africa went down, whereas in the Western countries that have imposed similar lockdowns to South Africa, the rates of domestic violence and murder of spouse, male against woman, has also gone up by a factor of 5. So alcohol is another major social factor as well as a health factor. So yeah, I mean, these are really big issues when you come to looking at the health of the nation and why you shouldn't have doctors going on television saying it's okay to be fat. I filled in there for you, David.
Rebecca, if there's anyone more suitable than you to fill in for whenever my internet whisks me off, it is absolutely you. So thanks very much for that.
I don't know what I said. I just rambled.
That's okay. That's my normal style, Rebecca. So you're fine. No worries in that one. Right then. So so long story short, obesity is not good for you, and people should be taking responsibility for themselves and not relying on the NHS or indeed junk doctors on junk TV to do it. Okay, the next thing.
Just jump in because I have seen something on the stream, and I do like to watch the stream. Graham, yeah. I'm overweight because I'm depressed. I'm depressed because I'm overweight. Okay, so if you're talking about yourself, Graham, there's only one thing I can say to you, which is set yourself a target of going out every day, and whatever you've done today, increase it tomorrow. So give yourself really, really small steps just to go for a walk. Do what you can the first day, and then the next day do a little bit more, and the next day do a bit more. And if you crack on with incremental steps, the minute you start feeling better in your head is when you'll start feeling better in your body. And when your body starts feeling better, you will naturally lose weight. And drink 3 liters of water a day. You will lose weight. I promise you.
Yeah, drinking water. Drinking is absolutely good advice. If you drank at least a couple of liters, 2-3 liters of water, it's really good. It fills you up, stops you from wanting to go and have crumpets and whatnot. But anyway, Rebecca Butler, moving on.
They were very nice.
They must have been. Next one. Can we bring up? This is a story that. So the Six Nations kicked off again. And I'm a big Six Nations fan, and you know, oh dear. So this was on this was the Saturday game, and as you can see, we have the English players, mostly all, so quite a few of them taking a knee, whereas by the looks of it, the Scottish team, there were very few of them taking a knee. And yeah, I hate politics being brought into sport anyway. I despise it. I just enjoy sport for the sake of sport. But this, and then I watched Rebecca the game yesterday, the Sunday game between who was it? I can't think. Was it France?
Yeah.
France and Wales.
France and Italy.
And there was none of that. Yeah. So why is it? So the question I put to you is, why is this such an obsessive thing with the English rugby, English sporting teams, but in this case the English rugby team? Why is this?
Well, let me make this observation. If it was institutional that you ought to take the knee, can somebody tell me why the referees don't take the knee? Because they never do, even in football.
Good
the referees
point.
Stand up. So the other thing is that I'm a big fan of rugby as well, huge fan. And I looked at that lineup. I looked at the picture and I thought, well, Billy Vannapola's standing and Courtney Lawes, because Courtney Lawes just stands like miles above everybody. Yeah. And I think, the majority of people kneeling are the white guys. There are one or two black and coloured guys there. But the majority of those kneeling are white, and the standing aren't. So, I have to say that all credit to people like Courtney Lawes and Billy Vanapola, because they know, as do, by the way, the whole Irish team, the whole Welsh team, the whole Italian team, and the whole French team, is that it's just virtue signaling nonsense. And is there a problem of racism in rugby?
No.
There is in football, and I've spoken about that before, that the crowds can be vicious and they can say things, but they have cleaned up their act. But rugby, I mean, as you know, I'm a football thug, and you don't stand in the terraces with an opposing team ever in football. But in rugby, nobody cares who you're supporting. You just go and stand in the stands and you watch the rugby. It's about the sport. It's not about the politics around the sport. That's why you watch sport. It's because it's got no politics in it. They're idiots. Yeah. They need to concentrate on scoring tries, not being on their knees before the match has started.
Well, to be honest, after that performance from England, a lot of questions have to be asked. But maybe they should spend more time about learning how to actually as you say, score tries and play attractive rugby. They were absolutely awful. But yeah, I just thought to myself, it's appalling virtue signaling. But and it has and sort of. I've been to many Six Nations rugby games in particular, Rebecca. I've been to all the grounds everywhere, really enjoy my Six Nations. I've never, ever, ever seen anything that could be even remotely described as racism. So I don't believe there's any racism of any significant quality and quantity in rugby. So why the hell are they doing it? Because obviously somebody if this is coming from on high as well, isn't it? I mean, this is, I presume, the those at the top.
Because if it was, the referees would be forced to kneel. This is players' choice. I don't think anybody's telling them they have to do it. I think they are choosing to do it for their own reasons. And you know what? That is fine. But please don't be a social justice warrior, because we're not interested in your religion. Imposition on us of whatever it is that's in your brain at this particular moment. Keep it to yourself. And if it's good enough for Courtney Laws not to kneel, I think you really need to start thinking. And fewer and fewer are kneeling. I don't know if you I don't think you watch football like I do, but fewer are kneeling now. They're more and more are standing up.
Yeah,
it's the white ones who are scared to appear to stand up now.
Yeah, cowardly, aren't they? It's submission to they think they have to be seen to virtue signal. It's just embarrassing. Rightly, the social media was replete with people mocking those players in the English rugby team who took a knee. I was pleased to see that, actually, because it does show that a lot of people now, we're all clever enough to figure out, yes, we don't want to see racism, absolutely not. Of any sort, by the way. But this is something else entirely. And but rugby players, I used to think they were maybe a little bit more intelligent than some football players, but not sure that we can actually say that. Maybe too many tackles to the head. I don't know. Anyway, that's enough about rugby. I'm moving on. Next one, Rebecca. Good news. Good news. You like this one. Next slide. Yes, Rebecca.
Yay!
Yay, the BBC. The BBC, showing how much in touch it is with the needs of the British people, has decided to increase the licence fee from 157.50 to 159, which I think nets them roughly in the region of 3.9 billion a year. Roughly 3.8, 3.9 billion a year. So the BBC have decided that despite the fact that in the past year, owing to COVID restrictions, they've produced less content than ever before, despite the fact that their ratings are dropping across the board, they're going to put the price up. What do you think about that, Rebecca? Are you celebrating the fact that the BBC want to just charge us that little bit more?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think they should charge us double that. There's such good value for money, aren't they? Do you know?
Great.
This time last year, I was at my goddaughter's wedding in Bombay. And my best friend there is married to the wokiest Remainer woke that you'll ever meet. He was an investment banker, and he thought Brexit was utterly ludicrous, and the whole issue of passporting of services was something that concerned him. Clearly, he had a vested interest. And, he and I were at loggerheads all the time, every time I went over there. And, my best friend's there cowering, going, oh, please don't have an argument, you two. But, he's a big corporate guy, and I'm saying, no, Brexit is a really good thing. Anyway, one argument after another. And last year I said, well, the effing BBC, they just let us all down. They're so partisan, this. And he was saying, well, no, because the BBC is something we turn to for reliable news. And I said, well, you turn to the BBC World Service, which actually is very good, but that's free. And he said, what do you mean it's free? I said, we pay. We pay for the BBC. And he said, do you? And I said, yeah. And if you don't pay, you get put in prison. And he was gobsmacked.
And that's the point. Yeah. Because
aloha.
Aloha. She can't believe Yes, as Donnelly
Yes.
girl, as Rebecca's just said, not only do we pay for it, but if we don't pay for it, you could go to prison. Sorry, Rebecca.
Yeah, so there you are. People who around the world see it as a respected institution.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I think they wouldn't fully appreciate the the Brexit emotional debate that we've had with the BBC as Brexiteers. And I
Yeah.
think, you know, our international audience wouldn't fully appreciate how hounded we were as Leave voters. But, you know, putting all that aside, yes, I mean, it's a criminal offence. Not that it ought to be a civil offence, by the way, because that's in many ways worse, because at least a criminal court will decide whether to send you to prison or not. If it's a civil offence, then the bloody bailiffs are at the door, and they're far worse than a criminal court, because a criminal court wouldn't put an 80-year-old granny, or, well, you know, into prison,
Yeah.
but a bailiff will remove items. So it shouldn't be civil sanction either. There has to be a different model that doesn't punish people who don't want it.
Well,
Because you haven't got a choice, Dawny girl. There is no choice. You have to have. It is a tax that you've got to pay. You don't get the option to say no.
And therein lies the fundamental problem I've had for such a long time with the BBC. They deny us the choice. I remember I used to go on with Nicky Campbell every time there would be a review of the BBC license fee and the costs and so on and so forth. And I always argued, listen, if the BBC is as good as you say it is, BBC, people will have a subscription model and people will pay to watch what they like. And if they don't like it, they don't have to. They won't pay. And of course, if you do that, Rebecca, 3.8 billion vanishes very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And when you've got superstars like Gary Lineker on his massive salary, and Graham Norton and some of these other characters that the BBC have, they simply couldn't afford to pay the talent the vast amounts that they do. So it's sort of self-perpetuating. But as I said, my argument in particular in the last year is less output, lower ratings, and you're putting your prices up. I mean, to me, that's the sign, Rebecca. It's a failing the BBC's failing anyway. I don't know if you've seen, there's a big row at the moment. Is it 750,000 or, yeah, it might be that. A big number of 75-year-olds anyway, a large number of 75-year-olds have said that they refuse to pay their license fee because it was free and now they're having to pay for it. So they're not going to pay. So it's a slow-mo car crash, the BBC.
I mean, you know, that there is an argument over the talent payments, which is a legitimate argument, and I by and large agree with it. But I can see the commercial argument that we don't want to lose talent to the other side. It's not the best argument, but I kind of get it. What I think is even more shocking is the offering that the BBC thinks it has to give the country, because how many BBC channels do you actually watch? Because there's BBC One, BBC Two, BBC Three, BBC Four, BBC Infinity. You then have the Gujarati channels, the Punjabi channels, the Bangladeshi channels, and that's just subcontinent of India. You've got the Islamic channels. How many people in the era of Sky cards that you can buy in India and come to the UK, they're not watching BBC Bangladesh. They're watching Bangladesh. That you don't. If you're an expat in Britain, you're not watching the BBC version of what your output is. You're actually watching your home nation. So they're completely out of touch. They've got about 20 channels, television channels alone. I mean, the vast sums of money spent on that. I'd love to know what the viewing figures are. I really would. And how do they work out viewing figures as well? How do they know?
Well, that's right. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that always fascinated me is viewing figures, and you know, they are published. You have to pay to see them though, but sometimes little snippets get out. And for example, one of the things that interested me was a year ago, BBC One's prime political program, Question Time. You know, which of course I know you once graced, Rebecca. I also was on it many years before you, mind you, and the viewing figures have went down from about 7 or 8 million per episode to 700,000 per episode, which is like shocking, and that tells you that people are moving. Young people don't watch it at all, to be honest. I mean, our generation maybe does, but the younger ones, I don't believe, watch it. I could be proven wrong.
Fiona Bruce has got the personality of a dead rabbit. I mean, that's why people won't watch it. She's great she's brilliant on the Antiques Roadshow.
She's good in that, yeah.
But she's crap. She's crap. I'm sorry, she's crap. The other one, I mean, I'm afraid to say it's another woman, and I'm not pointing fingers here, but Zoe Ball. She lost the Chris Evans.
That's right. Yeah.
But that really was a measure of how good Chris Evans and Terry Wogan were on that morning slot. But like Zoe Ball, in an attempt to show their diversity and their wokiness, they've gone and put somebody who's just irritating. I don't need Zoe Ball's manic depression at 7 o'clock in the morning. Thank you very much. I found Chris Evans easier to listen to. Zoe Ball, I found so extremely strident and difficult. She was the wrong choice, and they screwed up. And
but it's funny.
She's not worth the money.
Well, I have to say I've never listened to her, and I won't ever listen to her. But I actually used to listen to Terry Wogan back in the day, and it was a sad moment when Terry Wogan was kind of pushed out the door, and then Chris Evans came in and he did a job, and then he went out the door, and now Zoe Ball. So it's been like just this decline, isn't it? The decline and fall of the BBC. Not so much interested in their audience, just interested in being wokey. And in the case of Zoe Ball, I think a lot of it's gender pandering, isn't it? I mean, it's about the need. I believe anyone should get the job if they're the best person for the job, Rebecca. Their gender doesn't matter to me, but I don't really think.
In the interest of fairness and balance, I have started listening to the Today program again because I like Nick Robinson. I really do. I think he's a Brexiteer, and he's come in and he's cleaned up the Today program. So when Nick Robinson is on, it's a good program. I'm actually a bit of a fan of Emma Bartlett as well on Newsnight. She's raised the game on Newsnight. I actually like her style. So I'm engaging a little bit better because I'm forced to have this sodding license. So I might as well find something I like. And so Emma Bartlett on Woman's Hour is okay, but Jane Garvey had to leave. And the prime audience for Woman's Hour is the 50-somethings. And they've gone and put in the 30-somethings into the Woman's Hour slot. So, and Jane Garvey was saying, don't do this to Woman's Hour. We need somebody who's 50, with Emma, who's in her 30s and very, very good. We should have a 50-year-old woman presenting Woman's Hour. So there are offerings on the BBC that are actually quite good. And I think Tim Davie has made some pretty essential changes, but the entertainment side is like Ramesh Ranganathan. Why do I have to watch that irritating man? Why?
Yeah, he's one of my pet hates. He's awful. It's because he's not funny. Now, maybe it's a generation thing. My son and his wife think that he is the funniest thing ever. I just sit there. I just don't know. I just don't. I don't get it at all. But so the thing about the BBC is that there's obviously pockets of talent within it, and it does have some things. It would be foolish to universally slag it off. But where I think there's a really good argument. Make it subscription then. Make it subscription and pay your own way. Stop ripping people off. Stop increasing your license fee. Stop it. But they won't, of course. And I also think, Rebecca, I don't know what you feel about this, but I think because it's, it was so powerful in the past, and it's still powerful enough, let's be honest about it. Governments are scared of it. governments are scared to annoy it too much, lest it lash out at them. And even Thatcher wasn't really able to, when she didn't particularly care for it, I don't think, but she didn't take it on, and nobody certainly since then has been in a position to even want to try to do that.
Well, GB News is going to, isn't it? The Andrew Neil.
Yeah.
Absolutely going to make the BBC sit back and watch, because they're still Ofcom regulated. All these people going nuts on social media about how it's, going to be akin to a right-wing version of Fox News. Rubbish. They're Ofcom regulated. So I can't wait for Andrew Neil, because he speaks truth to power, and that's what we all love about Andrew Neil. And Andrew Neil will force the BBC to heal. And I think I can't wait, actually. I think it's a really interesting thing to watch, how their editorial their lines change.
And did you see, Rebecca, we'll just wrap this up shortly, but did you see, was it the campaign for countering hate? Yeah, you see that? And Femi, my old pal Femi, were to the fore and saying nobody should advertise with this new channel. So they want to cut off the financial supply to the new channel. I thought that was quite telling, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I've got one thing to say about that, and it's probably best if I end it here. The pursuit for relevance during a pandemic can be a true struggle for some people. And I think Femi's relevance is down the pan. There is none. He's constantly searching to find a relevant space, and there isn't one for him. He's too irritating.
Yeah, it was the worst job application ever, wasn't it? Where he was saying, if only they could find, they'll not have a young, talented person of color. They won't have someone like that, i.e. employ me. But truly pathetic stuff. So yeah, if there's anything worse than the BBC in some regards, it's most definitely Femi and his ilk. But as you say, and I see people on the stream are saying that about GB News. I mean, you're right, Rebecca. It will be Ofcom regulated. So that means there's lots of things that it won't do. But basically anything should be better than the BBC. Although I might say, I don't think Sky News or Sky News in particular is any better than the BBC. Arguably worse, actually. So Channel 4 is beyond words. I have nothing to say about Channel 4. It's so awful.
Where do you go for news? Because Al Jazeera is rubbish now. RT, Russia Today, they're not great. Their editorial content is quite weak most of the time. Channel 4 far too far up its own backside.
Really?
Where are it's Andrew Neil. Andrew Neil was the great one after Question Time, that the politics. Yeah. And even the Daily Politics is a lightweight, very soft, holding government ministers to account. It's very, very soft, the Daily Politics. So, we've lost, as I say, the only one I will stand up for is Nick Robinson, because he is genuinely smart, and he is genuinely straight down the middle. And I am a big fan of Nick Robinson. But the Andrew Marr show, no, thank you very much. No, that's too irritating. No, I can't wait. I really, really, because I want to get my news from a legitimate source. I don't want to be looking on Facebook and Twitter for news. I've just taken out a subscription to the New York Times because I'm interested in what's going on stateside. But I get all of my news from print media. I don't really get my news from broadcast media. It's all print media now.
Do you know, I think the more broadcast media you consume, the worse it is. The worse it. I tried to say this the other day. It was the old Mark Twain aphorism. Whether he said it or not, it's neither to the point. But if you don't read the press, you're uninformed, and if you do read it, you're misinformed. And you update that to these times. And I think if you consume loads of TV news, you're remarkably uninformed. If you read widely, then that helps. that helps, and that can be, you know, sort of some of the outlets you've talked about. Someone actually did say, I see a few people have flagged up Sky Australia. I agree with that. There's a couple of them down there that are back in my Twitter days. There's one particular lady whose name I can't quite remember, an Iranian exile who's gone to Australia, and she presents the show. Oh, I can't remember her name. Anyway, she's brilliant. They've done some really good journalism, Rebecca. You know, challenging journalism, and that's what it should be. But anyway, did I hear a dog bark in the background there? Did I hear?
No, you heard my glasses click on the table.
All right.
No, the puppy in 2 weeks today.
Yes, I noticed that. Yes, I see you're on the final countdown to getting your new puppy. So, well, you'll have to bring your new puppy onto the stream, Rebecca, and introduce the stream to the new arrival. When
I'm rather concerned he may announce his arrival while I'm on stream. I'm slightly concerned about potential background noise, but we'll just have to deal with it. I'll just put him in my lap and cuddle him during the show.
Well, look, Rebecca, I think we managed to rattle through those rightly. That was pretty good. I see all your comments, folks. Thanks very much for the different comments. Oh, you're being asked a technical question, Rebecca. This one's for you. What breed?
Oh, he's a Sprocker. So his mum is a Springer, brown Springer, and dad is a blue roan Cocker. So he is a grey and white spaniel. Very, very cute. And he still hasn't got a name. So anyway, don't worry, Tawny Girl. He'll be on the stream. Don't you worry. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. He'll be all over it.
So on that canine note, let's bring proceedings to an end. Rebecca, thank you very much for being on the stream. It's always a pleasure to see you on the stream. Thanks, folks, for being here with me. I will be back tomorrow night, and then I'm taking a break for a couple of days. So if you tune in 8 p.m. tomorrow night, you'll find me here in the chair. And other than that, thank you again for being on the stream, and I'll catch up with you all soon. But it's good night from me.
And it's good night from me. Bye, everybody.